Welcome to Signed, Conversations with Digital Mavericks. My name is Anita Sharma, and I'm your host. If you like the podcast, please follow, subscribe, like it on all social platforms. And you're listening now, which I very much appreciate. We are available everywhere you get your podcasts. So today's episode is a little bit different. Instead of interviewing a guest, I'm going to answer the top 10 questions that I get asked all the time about my practice, being an entertainment lawyer, working with creators. And these are questions I get from creators, law students, honestly, anyone curious about how this industry really works. And so we're going to talk a little bit about contracts and leverage, my career path, a few truths about entertainment law that don't always make it onto the highlight reel. So if you've ever wondered what an entertainment lawyer actually does, what creators should watch for before signing a deal, or how to build a career in this space, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Signed, Conversations with Digital Mavericks. Question number one, pretty obvious one. Why entertainment law? Why were you interested in that? So I didn't even know entertainment law was a thing, to be honest. I was in law school at the University of Ottawa up in Canada. It was my second year. I distinctly remember watching a film and seeing in the credits, production legal, something along that lines, legal services provided by, and it was a real light bulb moment for me. I was like, wow, that's it. That's what I want to do. I, at the time, loved films, loved parties, still do. It was a perfect way to merge those two things together. And I thought, yes, that's it. Entertainment law. That's what I want to do. So honestly, that was my decision-making process at the time. I also, really enjoyed books, films, anything creative. And so it was my chance to, work in that industry. And that was really exciting for me. So that's how I chose entertainment law. This one was from a student on LinkedIn. You built Sharma Law into a leader in digital media and entertainment. What were the key moments in your path from early practice to founding your own firm? So that's a big question. I'm not going to, go through my resume piece by piece. I will say that when people ask me this question, and especially, law students and people just starting out, I will say that, people say, oh, my career wasn't a straight line to where I am today. It was full of twists and turns. And I actually like to say my path to get to here, running my own practice, knock on wood, successful and having built something, was not only full of twists and turns, but was, full of hills and valleys and cliffs that I sometimes drove off, not literally, but figuratively. And, there was a lot of stops and starts and a ton of failure. And I remember one time in law school, I didn't get the job I wanted or something. And somebody said to me, you're exactly where you need to be, which at the time is really annoying to hear. But there is a tremendous amount of truth to that. Every experience in your life, whether it's positive or negative, will lead to the next one and, lead you down certain paths where hopefully you end up in where you need to be. And that's, what happened to me. I mean, I started at a big firm in New York City and I was very unhappy. It wasn't really my thing. And I was always knew that I was entrepreneurial and I wanted to, eventually run my own business. I also just had the personality where I didn't want to work for anyone else. And that some people are like that and some people are not. And I had a very high tolerance for risk and, left that job, broke out on my own and was highly unsuccessful. So it was difficult to make a living, living in New York City and trying to build your own practice with zero experience and like 3 years out of law school. So, I ended up eventually quitting law and going to film school. And so, I tell people I quit law to get here, to be where I am. I mean, that's what it took. It took me leaving, going to film school, becoming a producer, really, feeling motivated and inspired again, and realizing that as much as I loved producing, what I really wanted to do was represent creative people, which is what I do today. So, it was a tough path and it took me over 20 years to get to where I am. So, I encourage people to cut yourself some slack. Failure is not the end of the world. Something good will come out of this. And that's really how I got here. So more failure than success, to be honest. And here I am, and lucky enough to love what I do and have built this practice, which is very rewarding for me personally. All right, question number 3. Let's get to it. Before creator economy law was really a category. It's so interesting. I guess that is a category now. Creator economy law. Okay. Was really a category. You started representing digital talent in 2013. What did you see early that others missed? This is an interesting one. So in 2013, I was practicing on my own in Toronto. I had wrapped up film school, produced a couple of very small, low budget indie films. And as much as I loved that and I loved that experience, I knew, having done that what I really wanted to do was represent creative people and help them realize their vision. And so I went back to practicing law on my own. I was living in Toronto. I had left New York City because it was simply couldn't afford to live there when I didn't have like a real job. And so I ended up, watching like a YouTube video of a very famous female YouTuber at the time, and just like really loving the content. I mean, I think it kind of all came back to just really liking what I was seeing and wanting to be involved in helping that person advance, and, talking to as many people as possible to see who knew her or how I could meet her. And, 6 months later of just being persistent, a friend of a friend's uncle's cousins, mechanic, happened to have a connection with her or something like that. It was, 102 degrees of separation. And so, I ended up, signing her. But I think what was incredible to me at that time and what I realized is I was working a lot in indie film, and I had, my clients really didn't, sadly, have a ton of leverage. They toiled for years working on a film only to finally make it and then sell it for like 20 grand and to some distributor and never see another cent again. And so, that was frustrating. And when I realized about YouTube at that time, which was, just starting out as a platform, really, like, I realized that this client, this digital creator client making YouTube videos, had all the leverage. And what was incredible to me is when she released a video, it would get more views than the #1 rated show in Canada at that time, which was The Amazing Race Canada. And I was like, holy shit, there is something here. There's no more gatekeepers, right? Like, you don't have to sell your soul, sell your film you've toiled away for it to be seen. Now we have the internet. Now we have this social media platform in YouTube, and they build their own audience, the artist, the creator. And they don't have to, they're not at the whims of studio heads or development executives, to get it out there, to get it on screens, whether it's TV or film, theaters, whatever. And so that was a real light bulb moment for me. And I thought, something's happening here, and whatever it is, I want to be a part of it because, frankly, I want to represent creators that actually have some leverage. As much as I love indie film, and it is still, I still love it, I was like, there's something here. And so, that's how it all started, really, was just watching content, liking it, trying to figure out who was making it, chasing them down, and then, sort of diving headfirst into that space. And that was really exciting. So, they say there's that saying that, luck is, 99% sweat, 1% opportunity or something. I've probably got that all wrong, but I think it's true, is like, luck is, you make your own luck in a way, right? I had just sort of put myself in a position where I was open to, meeting new people and a new client base and a new form of media. And, it came to me really at the end of the day. I did chase, but, there was, I chased, but was open to receive. So I think that worked for me there. All right. Question number 4. For law students who want to enter entertainment law, what should they do in law school right now, not later? So this one I get a lot, and I will say the entertainment industry is all relationship based. It's all, who you know and what your relationships are. And that is just a fact. I mean, there's a lot of industries that are relationship based. I don't think there's anything that is as relationship based as the entertainment industry. And so, what I would say to you as a law student is network, network, network. Like send me an email on LinkedIn, be respectful of my time, but I'm happy to speak to you when I have the time. And it might be 6 months from now, but I will talk to you. I like to pay it forward. A lot of people helped me back in the day. So, approach people you want to talk to, tell them you're interested in, learning about them and what they do. Meet as many people as you can, get out there, go to those events. Wherever you are, I'm lucky to be in New York City. There's obviously a lot of stuff happening here, but anywhere you are, go to film festivals, go to whatever festival, go get out there, meet people. Talk to as many people as you can. Always be respectful of people's time, obviously, and in your communications. But, people say to me, I don't, what's your theory of networking? And I'll tell you what my theory of networking is, and it's really complicated. And it's something, if you have a pen and paper, you might want to start taking notes. My theory is meet everyone. That's it. There's nobody who I will not take a meeting with. Within reason. So that's it. That's my philosophy, because even if I meet a law student, I don't know where that person's going to end up. That person could end up running a studio somewhere someday. That person could end up, I don't know, in charge of talent at CAA, WME, who knows, or could end up as an agent or a manager. And so to me, I still network like I networked back in law school, in the sense that I'll take every meeting and I'll meet people. You just never know where people are going to end up. And it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter that I'm, 20 plus years out. I will still make the time to meet people. And it is, and I will say, there's some selfish motives there, and that's the reality. But, I do think you just never know, where people are going to end up. Number 5. Which new challenge in digital media law are you personally most interested in tracking right now? So, digital media law, one of the reasons I like it so much and like this area of practice is because it's changes so quickly. One day there's a platform there's a Clubhouse, and the next day it's not there anymore. I think the only trend is to understand that tomorrow everything can change, and to stay on top of what's happening in the industry, developments in the industry, what people are doing. This is the other thing I would say to law students who are interested in this area of practice, or anyone else for that matter, is stay on top of things, read the trades, follow, what's happening in the industry. There's so many resources, you're carrying around a resource every single day. You've got your phone, read, follow people, follow things. The only trend in digital media that is dependable is that it changes constantly, right? So, my goal always is to try to stay on top of things, as much as I can, and understand that things can change quickly, and be prepared to accommodate those changes, whether it's contractually. For example, with TikTok, when people didn't know what was happening with TikTok in brand deals and sponsorships that we would do for clients, for example, we would have to add new language in there that if the platform is no longer, we would add this language in legal language, but basically say, if this platform doesn't exist anymore, then the client can do a make good, or you can mutually agree on doing the, posting the content on a different platform. So it's things like that, just making sure you're sort of on top of what's happening in the industry. Number 6, As platforms, algorithms, and formats keep changing, what legal fundamentals stay constant? Another good question. So it's, like I said, you can definitely account for things like AI, platforms maybe disappearing because of some issues happening, like with TikTok recently. I think contractual issues still remain, right? Contractual basics, like the basics of a contract, those like indemnities and reps and warranties. And I'm not going to get too in the weeds with the legal stuff, but there are legal principles that you can apply that have not changed. So the legal principles of contracts have not changed. What is in the contract has changed. And so that's an important distinction. And, there are definitely legal fundamentals that stay constant. And that's, like basic contract law, copyright, trademarks, laws around IP. Those fundamentals are still there and still in place against the backdrop of this rapidly changing industry and rapidly changing way that we post content and consume content. So that's, the basics are definitely still in place. Number 7, what is one developing issue in digital talent representation that you believe will become much more important over the next few years? So digital talent representation is, I find, very unique compared to, quote, traditional representation. So it's very different than representing an actor or a musician or a writer. The difference is that my clients, digital first creators, most, not all, don't want to be actors, for example. The brand is themselves, right? They are mostly entrepreneurial and many are business people now, right? So for me, each of my clients is their own media company. And that's what we're seeing now, right? We're seeing these creators becoming media companies, owning their IP, super important. And again, this goes back to what I was saying really early on in the conversation about not having the gatekeepers anymore, not having these studios and distributors and broadcasters forcing you to sign over all your IP just so your show can go on, your film can be seen somewhere. So that's really powerful. And I think that issue with digital talent is that as entertainment lawyers, we now have to understand corporate commercial law and like the world of, employment law, for instance, because my clients are hiring people to work for their companies. And so it's definitely broadening the scope of, I think, the definition of what an entertainment lawyer is if you work in the creator economy, because in addition to the basic talent agreements and the IP, trademarks, copyright, et cetera, they are running businesses. So it's expanding into that area of practice a lot. And, you need to be able to service your client in those areas. And so it's not just straight up entertainment quote anymore, I don't think, for digital talent representation. That's the trend I'm seeing, is definitely a movement towards, building these individual media companies and seeing, what they can do with those companies. And so that's, really exciting. I love that. It's, definitely an area I'm particularly very interested in. So number 8, when should a creator hire a lawyer? Yep, I get this one a lot. I mean, obviously I'm a lawyer that represents creators, so I'm going to tell you should hire me like now. But no, that's honestly, it costs money to hire a lawyer. It's, we're providing a service and we charge for that service. So, I think at the point where you're starting to have to sign contracts, for example, obviously, please do not sign anything that you have not read and you don't understand, because that's not a good thing. And you don't know, your IP is valuable and you are valuable, and it's, very dangerous to do that or to read it and think you understand it. And please, for the love of God, I beg you, do not feed it into ChatGPT and ask it, whatever the hell it is, don't ask AI to advise you on your contract. It is a mistake. It's not there yet, and I don't think it ever will be, but I'm just saying that's a mistake. So don't use ChatGPT or Claude as your lawyer. Claude is not a lawyer. It's basically like whenever you get documents that you have to sign where you don't understand what you're signing or you're concerned about signing your rights over. And, if you're just starting out, there's a lot of lawyers that will cut you a break, or they'll see you're starting out, or they're willing to help you because they sense, potential for growth there. And so don't be afraid to, talk to a lawyer who's experienced in this area and ask them and, if they'd review it for you at a reduced rate, or, how much it would cost off the bat, and see if you can try to budget for that. But it is, I think the second that you're being asked to sign things, I think is a good time for you to try to reach out to a lawyer, or to reach out to a lawyer who's, experienced in whatever area, that contract covers. Number 9, do you ever tell clients to walk away from big money? So, sure. I think it's not, I think that I would rephrase that question in that it's not about walking away from big money. It's about walking away from an opportunity that is not right for that creator, where the party on the other side of the table has demonstrated that maybe they're not the best party to work with. And there's many different ways that can happen. Maybe they haven't responded to you. They don't care about your concerns. They tell you that there's no changes allowed to the contract, just sign it. They're not the nicest people in the world. I think, once you sign a contract and you're obligated to provide services and you're obligated to work with that person, you want to make sure that that's the right move for you personally, professionally. Is there an amount of money in the world that's worth being miserable, doing things that you don't want to do, potentially harming your brand? And I think most importantly, signing a deal, it might seem like big money now, but it's preventing you from other opportunities down the road that could be even bigger money. So I think it's important not to be short-sighted. So I wouldn't say it's about the money. I've advised clients not to do small deals, medium deals, big deals, for many different reasons. And often it's because of what I just talked about. It's just not the right fit. It's not people that you want to work with. The hassle is going to be is going to be way more than that deal is worth. And so, I'm very cautious to advise clients not to take deals, period. But I also am pretty honest if I feel like I don't think it's going to end well, or it's going to be a good experience for them. I do delicately tell them, like, I don't know if this is such a good idea. And if they still want to go through with it, then my job as their attorney is to protect them as much as possible and to put in those guardrails and to, anticipate all the things that could go wrong and to try to prevent that. For instance, try to get them a good, termination provision where they can get out of it whenever they can and that kind of thing. So just trying to figure out how to hedge that risk if they still want to go ahead with a risky deal, which also happens, and that's life, and people take risks, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. So number 10, this is the last question I'm going to talk about in this podcast, but I will say I will do more podcasts like these because I do get a lot of questions and I often keep track of them and, want to continue educating people about the creator economy or answering their questions, because this is something I'm, incredibly passionate about and love what I do. And I'm, so grateful to be able to wake up every morning and actually go to a job that I love. And I understand that's not, everybody's situation. And so, hoping to do more of these types of podcasts. But I'm going to get to that last question. Okay, I lied. It's the second last question. So it was really 11 questions in total. Sorry, my math isn't good, but my reading and writing is excellent. So what is the hardest part of representing creators specifically? So I don't, I guess if I had to choose, like I don't find it super difficult because like I said, I love what I do. So I think if you're the type of lawyer that really is comfortable working with precedents and likes to sort of have an idea of, how to do things because it's been done many times before, and that's fine. Like some people prefer to work in that way. If you are a lawyer in this space, you basically have to understand how to draft things from scratch because there's many situations and new deals, new structures, new tech, new platforms where you have to figure it out. Like, oh, this has never been done before, So, oh, Netflix is now licensing creator IP. Now, what does this mean, right? Like, how do we do this? Because my client has a pre-existing business and again, is not desperate to license to any, streamer necessarily at all because they have built their own audience and they're receiving revenue from platforms. They, own that distribution channel. So it's interesting because you're looking at what would, be quote a traditional deal, but you're looking at it in a completely different light with a different type of client. So you really, I think sometimes, the challenge is figuring it out. You have to figure it out and there's no precedence and we're making the precedents as we go, which is, another incredibly rewarding part of my job is that I get to do that. I get to be really intellectually challenged and, really use my brain, different parts of my brain to figure out how to paper a deal or structure a deal. And that's, incredibly fun for me, not for everybody. It is for me. And I know it's working in the Wild West a little bit and, it's risky, but that's, the industry that we're in right now in the digital media space. I think, the only other issue is I find that, social media can obviously be challenging and there's a lot of negativity out there. And I think, when you're working with creators who are constantly exposed to, a barrage of negativity at times and really mean and awful comments, I think the mental health aspect, being concerned for people when they're being attacked by trolls and things, that's challenging because it's a unique, for all the positives of social media, there's obviously a lot of negatives as well. And so, there's that dark underside that you see sometimes and you're just like, wow, like people are really mean and people are really awful. And it's not fun to see that in real time and happening to somebody that you care about because we care about all of our clients. And so, yeah, that's definitely a challenging part of working in this space. In the last question, and like I said, my apologies, it actually is question number 11, but is another, fun one that I seem to answer all the time, which is for me, what do I see as the biggest myth about entertainment lawyers? And I think the biggest myth is like our lives are not an episode of Entourage. We're not necessarily screeching around in convertibles with sunglasses on, screaming into our cell phones, as fun as that sounds. Ultimately we are lawyers at the end of the day, and we're reviewing contracts and we're protecting your IP and we're negotiating and we're working with agents and managers and we're, trying to close deals and get them done. And like we are sitting at desks and we're working. And it is a lot of, my practice as a transactional entertainment lawyer is a lot of contracts, a lot of reviewing and redlining. And, it is incredibly interesting, but, at the end of the day, we are lawyers and we have to protect our clients and make sure that we get the law right in these contracts and the drafting right and the principles right. So, as fun as it is, and there are fun parties to go to, absolutely. There's fun stuff to do and it's great to go to screenings when you've worked on, shows, and that's a really rewarding part. But, the day-to-day is, sitting at a desk and being a lawyer and like I said, reviewing contracts and, filing trademarks and protecting your clients legally. And, the parties and the festivals and the screenings are, just a really fun, benefits, but not the entire, you know, the entire day or the entire experience of being an entertainment lawyer. So it does sound very glam. I've definitely had some glam times, but it's not, sadly, the majority of what I do at all. But I still, do consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world for being able to do what I do. And I really do love it. And I thank you for listening to this podcast. And please, as I said, follow, subscribe, @ the podcast on all of your social media platforms. And yeah, you can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Signed, Conversations with Digital Mavericks. This episode was produced by myself and Phoebe Dunn, edited by Carmine Mattia, social media strategy, Maureen Lauren Sedlak, and signed theme music by Carmine Mattia.